Ladies, what is the one hurtful comment that stayed with you for eternity? A text that my then boyfriend wrote about me. Almost 10 years ago and I still remember it word for word. I resent that I'm with her. She's not that attractive. Her personality bothers me. And to be honest, I feel like I'm settling. Big time. When I asked my boyfriend at the time why we didn't sleep together anymore, he shrugged and said, "You disgust me. How would you know? You're not even a mom." This was said while I was trying to comfort a friend who was unexpectedly pregnant with her second child, much sooner than she planned to be. I had said something like, "You're going to get through this, and once you see their face, you'll be just as happy as when you saw first child." At the time, my husband and I had been trying to conceive for a little over a year. Our friends and family were aware because we are just very open. I know it was said at the heat of the moment, but I never forgave her for saying those words. It wasn't the first time she said something like that, and I have been slowly pulling away from her ever since. After 23 years together, I tricked you into marrying me. I never loved you. I married you for your money. I was so upset I don't remember the exact words. We're divorced now. I had my first best friend in high school. She hated me my first season on swim team, and then when we swam for summer school, I invited her to swim in my lane. We got along great. I was the one who told her about the lifeguard gig that we both got hired and worked a great many years. When someone asked how we became friends, and we were as close as sisters for many years, she always told them, "She's really like a stray dog that I fed and now won't go away." It took me a long time to realize how toxic that was and how it made me constantly feel like I was an obligation, and not someone anyone would truly want to ever actually want to be around. I was maybe 12 and making myself breakfast. I put butter and peanut butter on my bagel. My aunt said, "Whoa, you better start just putting one or the other. It's going to catch up to you." I was a slim girl and played sports all year round. It never caught up to me. I think back on that comment and feel bad for my aunt. I feel bad that she felt the need to say that to a young girl. I wouldn't say you have a good body. My mother, 2 years ago on the 4th of July, totally out of the blue, "You really need to find a man. I don't care if you need to settle. You need to be less picky because when your father and I die, you will be alone." Thanks, Ma. Guess I don't have friends, so I need to settle for someone I don't actually like just so I'm not alone. I felt like saying, "Well, when you die and I sell off all the assets you're leaving me, I'll have enough money to keep myself occupied, thank you." My boyfriend at the time, we had just had one of our many massive blowouts. He told me no one would want me because I was broken on the inside and couldn't have children. Now with my wonderful husband, expecting our first child this month. My grandmother telling me when I was a toddler that one day I'm gonna be so fat I won't fit through the doors and I'll have to be carried out by crane. I am still battling with disordered eating to this day because of her. When I was a kid, my dad was making fun of me, and I hesitantly tried to push back and ask him not to talk about me like that. He said, "You're just oversensitive and selfish. If people aren't praising you, they're not allowed to talk about you. Is that it? You think you're special and deserve non-stop compliments?" And 25 years later, I'm an adult who would rather fucking die than stand up for myself and be viewed as oversensitive or seeking praise. Sometimes you have to let your dreams die. It is possible that it's because she was exercising? My husband to the reproductive endocrinologist when we found out at 9W5D that our baby no longer had a heartbeat. To their credit, I've never seen a group of medical professionals swiftly, sternly, and immediately say, "No," so quickly in my entire life. I don't think he meant to blame me. I think he was looking for answers where none could be found. Nonetheless, when he is lying on his deathbed, I will probably remember that moment. It's been a year and I still think about it a lot. When my dad said I looked like a prostitute for wearing a tank top outside in the summer. I was only 12. Cue a lifetime of worrying about my obscene boobs, all the time and everything. I was in middle school prime time for self-esteem lol and my ex-friend, F. said to me in the hallway, "I like being friends with you because you're not as pretty as the other girls so boys won't pay attention to you." 10 years later and I still think about that every time I go out with a group of friends. Ew, you have orangutan titties. Reader, I was 12. If I ever run into that girl again I'm going to tell her what a horrible person she was back then. I was 13 and I was struggling heavily with an eating disorder. I was looking at my body from the side in the mirror and my mom caught me and asked me if I was pregnant. She told me I couldn't hide that from her. I was always told I was probably gonna get pregnant in high school. I was legit like 90 pounds and I assume she thought I was fat and pregnant and my eating disorder is still an issue 8 years later. Skeptical smiley face. Spoiler. I'm 20 in a 6-year relationship and I'm pretty sure I don't want kids at all. 2. I remember off the top of my head. My stepdad telling me my ass looks fat when I'm riding a bike at 14. And a guy on a date telling me I'm rude for not looking him in the eyes constantly when he's talking, and interrupting him, talking too much. I later found out I have ADHD, which explains the excessive talking and interrupting people. His voice echoes through my head every time I talk to someone and notice I'm struggling with those 3 things. Thanks guys, I hate it. My mum dropped me off at school and said to me, if you don't come home, no one will miss you and you will be doing everyone a favor. I was 12. The previous night she beat me so bad with a wire coat hanger it left marks all over my back. My PE teacher saw this and phoned social services. I ended up not going home that day after all. Not so much something that was said, but something that was done. I can't remember the words used, but it has stuck with me since it happened. I was struggling to find a job and couldn't pay my rent. I got in trouble for stealing food at 2 different stores and was dealing with the cost of all of that, and I reached out to my mom for financial help. She, instead, sent me a list of homeless shelters in my area. 12 years later and I still think about that moment from time to time. Whoever gave you those scars should have just killed you. Still insecure about those scars, and that dehumanization makes me so mad. Oh, I'm sorry I'm not as attractive to you now, might as well be dead. You probably don't have the emotional capacity for love. I have 2 that live in my brain always. In my 20s I was a very annoying drunk, it's true. One night I was sober and hanging out with people who clearly didn't like me and one of the girls, probably 30 at the time, said, "Oh wow, rambling Andy. You aren't as annoying as we always thought." Then I had a boss tell me a few years ago that people don't like me because of my deep raspy voice, and I should change it. Fun times lol. Boys won't like you if they see the stretch marks on your thighs. My mom. I was 14, and I dared to wear a bikini instead of a skirt at the beach. It stayed with me because I decided then that any boy who had an issue with my stretch marks wasn't a boy I wanted to spend time with. I don't know, my ex just had these tight perky tits. They were great. The morning after I was drugged and he took advantage. In high school, I worked at a bookstore cafe. It was my lunch break and I was starving, and hadn't eaten all day, so ordered a mini hand pie from the cafe. Some asshole older man behind me in line, like 65 years old, had the gall to say to my 15-year-old self, just remember, a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Still holding out for the invention of the time machine so I can go back to 2004 and punch him in the face on behalf of my very insecure, confused, teenage self. No man is going to want you if you keep doing XYZ. XYZ changed over time. It was things like farting, playing video games, laughing, wearing my PJs during the day, etc. etc. She also told me that to make relationships work you have to keep the mystery alive. Thanks, twice divorced mom. Every time I take my socks off, my boyfriend goes, "Ew," or says I have monkey feet, or tells me not to get my gross feet near him. They're not weird, I don't know what his problem is. Otherwise he's okay, but that shut hurts. She's so gross. The context is even worse. I was in 6th grade and already had horrible self-esteem. The comment was completely uncalled for, too. We were just doing our work in class, when I overheard the one guy in class wondering where another girl of my same name was at. The kid next to him was just like, "Oh, well, there's Chris and Dee." There was a pause from the other kid, and the comment of my being revolting was made. Yeah, bullying happened a lot in that grade, and I am still recovering from the trauma, and I will probably never get any self-confidence back. You'd look really hot if you put your face on a different body. A classmate of mine in high school. I had my tubes tied after my twins were born. Shortly after I became a single mom. An aunt that I was fairly close to told me that I would never have a long-term relationship, marriage with a man if I didn't have his kids, because real men don't take care of another man's kids. My dad has epilepsy, he'd get random seizures every once in a while. When he'd get frustrated with me he'd say, "You're gonna give me a heart attack and kill me. I would think at your age you would be better at sex. You should watch some porn and learn something." This will haunt me the rest of my life and plays a big part in why I am celibate now. In high school I used to be friends with 2 girls. We hang out together 24/7 until one of them got pregnant and moved away to a different country. So it was just us two left. After some time she invited us to visit. The other friend arrived there early but she was gone by the time I arrived. Apparently they had a major argument about something and decided to never speak again. I was also told that the moment she arrived she basically said to my other friend, "Thank God that I am here with you now. Hagraven is so boring that spending time with her makes me want to kill myself." Sad face. Sadly a few come to mind. All from my ex-husband. Ex for good reasons and significant other much better for it. The reason I like you is because you remind me of her. He is now with the her. I didn't want to have the baby. I only did it to see if it would make me love you. Don't get me wrong, I love the baby now, said to me shortly after I told him I was going through postpartum depression and needed support. The time my mom didn't believe me that my boyfriend at the time was attracted to me, simply because of what I look like. To this day I'm shocked every time someone finds me attractive, and I do think it's tied to this comment. I've ruined you for all other men. Since I'm still single, maybe. I don't know who gave you the idea that you were somebody special. My mom, unfortunately. A good friend of mine constantly made jokes about my huge nose. Nowadays, it fits perfectly into face and I'm mostly not insecure about it, but I still cannot forgive my friend. A so-called friend, crush, age 10, saying, "You're the cleverest girl at school so it's just a shame that you're also the ugliest." That comment really messed me up as it made me think these two things were mutually incompatible. So whenever I took pride in my appearance, I thought that would detract from my intelligence and vice versa. Don't flatter yourself, darling. When expressing to a male friend my fear that I was only invited to parties because I was an early developer, had a womanly body. I was 16. He then told me I was only invited because this one guy insisted. A guy that soon after pressured me into a relationship with him. Not only did it cripple my already limited self-confidence at a very vulnerable age, but now whenever I start to like my body at all, I can hear his comment telling me to not flatter myself. Imagine having already found the perfect way to tell a girl she's ugly, and self-conceited for considering otherwise, by the time you're 16 years old. Anything about being hairy. Boys in secondary school were the worst. My self-confidence is 1000x what it was, but I still shave my arms, upper lip and feel a little ashamed that it still bothers me. I had one of those friends that preaches she's honest and always speaks her mind but in fact she is just rude and inconvenient. Every time I was laughing she told me I had an ugly laugh. It stayed with me to this day. I cannot laugh without having the urge of covering my mouth with my hand. Basically I cannot have fun without being self-conscious. It's a fucked up thing to do. Damning someone to never have a pure moment of joy without feeling bad about themselves. I was scrolling my younger sister's Instagram and showing it to the guy the first was dating. We were joking about setting her up with his brother. He goes, "Wow, you and your sister look so alike. She's just skinnier. I mean you're both pretty, she's just in better shape." At the time I was 5'9" and maybe 140 pounds, and definitely in better shape than he was. That comment still plays in my head every time I look at my body in the mirror. I heard my parents talking from another room. My dad said I looked like I was pregnant. I was 10 years old. He was never insensitive to me face to face. He was very kind and loving, but this changed me completely. I never had a healthy relationship with food and it may not be because of this but it still hurt. This is not the only comment from a family member I got about my body weight, but this is the first I remember. A boy in 7th grade creative arts class telling me I'll never be anything because I am not creative enough. It doesn't stick with me in a hurtful way. It's just something to look back at and laugh now that I'm on track to retire by 25 and he's got all sorts of issues. Husband. I don't love you anymore. My mom referring to me as a teenager, what a waste. Face with rolling eyes. My mom said to me, "I'm done with you," when I tried to genuinely apologize after a disagreement. When she's stressed she sometimes gets verbally abusive, and it always hits me harder than if anyone else says anything to me because she can pinpoint my insecurities. Putting a name to it, verbal abuse, is hard because I still love her and I enjoy being with her when she's not angry, but I'm looking forward to when I'm not living at home because then I have a much lower chance of getting on her bad side. Someone told me once that I'm not my husband's dream girl, and actually I'm not anyone's dream girl. I'm the sweet, quiet girl that guys settle for because they can't get the dream girl, and even though I'll do all the things, treat them well etc., deep down they will always know they were settling. So I'm dream girl's mediocre friend. Yeah. That stuck with me.